of in this dungeon. There's so much stuff that can potentially one-shot or put out heavy damage on the whole group even if it is left unchecked in that raging window. So we've seen a lot of groups here we see getting started in the game. We actually have a difference in compositions. ASCENSION is going to be playing that Moonkin. That's a very standard choice in Spires we've seen so far this weekend. Does have that Soothe. Echo is saying, you know what? We don't need it. We will take the more damage, thank you very much. And we are playing this Windwalker instead on Frag there. Frag Crobat is his beautiful monk name there.
Yeah, so very interesting. I have been wondering why so many teams have been playing this Moonkin, and we casters did figure that it was mainly for utility and for the single target burst that Moonkin does provide because this dungeon is now tyrannical, right? And of course the Soothe because of the raging effect. Now this means that Echo does not actually have an Enrage Dispel, so that's something they have to watch out for, of course, specifically if they're going to be doing that Angel Pull at the very end. But one thing to notice, if you do the triple Angel Pull, then the Soothe is not actually as important compared to if you're splitting the pull. Because if you split the pull, then the third angel actually has all of the effects at the same time, and then removing the Enrage is really important. On the triple angel pull, it's not as important in my opinion because they don't actually have the abilities of the other angels just yet, right? So we'll see what Echo is going to be doing later. We do know that Perplexed is not pulling the 3 angels all at once though, because we've already seen Perplexed show us this dungeon yesterday, unless they changed up their strategy from yesterday to today.
Yeah, this is something that teams can do, is update their strategy over the course of the weekend, but it is a costly decision, and it means that you're foregoing some practice time that you could spend just honing your strats, practicing things that went wrong for you the day before. And it means that, I mean, you can only really do it for like 1 or 2 dungeons, so it would mean that they don't have something like that planned for other dungeons. I suspect we will see the same game plan out of Perplexed as we've seen so far this weekend in this key, as they are already pulling this Pride at like 70% health into the first boss. This is a extremely bold strategy, but they're relying on this Ashen Hallow that you can see on the ground right now from Ryson to do all of their damage and all of their healing for the next 30 seconds. Look at those meters.
Yeah, so Perplex pulling the Pride onto the boss immediately, while Echo chooses to almost completely finish that Pride. It's still on 10% at this point, has high stacks, did get Touch of Death by Fragments here on that Windwalker, and now the Ashen is being popped. So the difference here in strategy is that Perplex is gaining time because they can cleave onto the boss while finishing off the Pride, but they have to commit a lot of cooldowns before they are receiving the Pride buff. While Echo, on the other hand, look how fast they're nuking this boss. They already caught up on damage because they had saved all of their offensive cooldowns to be used after the Pride is dead, so it's getting amplified by that Pride buff.
Also, one benefit of doing it Echo's way is that they got their Lust, their Ashen, their Pride while the 2 bosses were stacked on top of each other. Whereas Perplexed, a lot of this Prideful buff was spent with those bosses, you know, one of them airborne and one of them on the ground, harder to cleave between the 2 of them. So definitely something that it looks like Echo has the better of this, because they pulled this boss a lot later than Perplexed, but they have killed it a lot earlier. And you can see right now they already are getting started here with this very next pull. Mira's getting in position there, while now is running around with Bop on him to prevent those cats from stunning him out of stealth, and then canceling it and getting started with the pull once everybody else is on those threat tables as well. You do have to be careful if you ever see your tank with Bop there to make sure you do not get in combat with those mobs, otherwise they will run at you instead of the tank until that thing is canceled.
Yeah, so this is actually a really important pull. We've seen lots of teams lose quite a lot of time here because the tank wasn't able to kite it within that flame patch. But you see the Ring of Peace coming out of Fragments here for Echo, and it's actually really helpful for these kind of pulls. Ring of Peace is actually one of the almost best utilities that you can even have in these MDI dungeons, because it helps the tank out so much and it helps to keep everything grouped within the AoE. So that's why Echo managed to finish this off so quickly. Perplex still doing also a really good job. They also have the Moonkin utility, so you have the Vortex and you have the Typhoon, which also really helps to keep everything stacked up.
Yeah, it's hard to say actually which is a better, you know, kit for keeping things controlled than the Ring of Peace versus the Moonkin utility. They are definitely two of the very best specs in the game for managing that kind of pull. So a masterclass from both teams on how exactly to execute something like that. And I think there were probably 0 flame patch ticks missed between both teams there. However, Echo, by virtue of killing that boss a little bit faster, I think also by virtue of focusing down the Dark Praetor so it didn't charge out of the pack ever, have been able to get a little bit more time here. You can see already they will be reaching that 45% trash mark. They have that Pride now spawning, the 40% Pride, which they're going to kill. We've seen some teams find a way to skip this Pride. If you kill both of the Goliaths right around the same time, you can potentially use the Invis Pots to skip this Pride, but it looks like Echo is not going to bother with that. One thing that they've also done is they've picked up that Kyrian Spear that was on the ground, and so we'll see how they plan to use that, how exactly big they think they can go in this next area, because this is something that it can be a little bit of an equalizer the next couple pulls. There's a little bit of a patrol that you sometimes have to wait for, so if both teams find themselves waiting for the same sequence in the patrol, and you know what, Perplexed actually, they have executed that Pride skip, so this is going to be a huge comparison. Which of these strats is going to be faster?
Yeah, we do see them gather up this huge pool here now where they're going to be using that Kyrian Spear, the Patrol plus that initial pack. Wolf dropping really low. SC did manage to get that Kyrian Spear and a Full Moon being procced as well by Ashan. One of the Inquisitors was not in, but did now get gripped by Divine Field, so they should be able to finish this off. But some of them still pretty high HP, so lots of interrupts still need to be done so they don't go down. They have a Soothe effect from that Druid. If, for example, the Inquisitor is a really nice target to soothe in case any of those Dark Clashes are going through. But Echo, on the other hand, executed this pull so much quicker because they had that Pride buff, right? So really interesting to see the differences in strategies here. Echo just finishing off the Prides by themselves and then just utilizing that Pride buff for those huge pulls, where Perplexed values skipping the Prides more or pulling them on top of other things and just using their offensive and defensive cooldowns to deal with packs without Pride. And it looks like they're both incredibly even, both of them now on this second boss platform.
I have to say, I think the Perplexed got the better of this Pride exchange. I think that skip ended up saving them some time because they were quite a bit behind before, and now they are getting started with this pull only a couple of seconds later than Echo. This is going to be such a close game, though. You can see crowd control effects out on a few of those mobs near the top of the stairs, and they are at 59% trash count here. So as soon as one thing dies here, once this Forsworn squad leader goes down, that will be the 60% Pride spawning. We will see what these teams elect to do with it because they do want to pull onto the boss as soon as possible. Probably what they're going to do is cleave this Pride down with these two trash mobs and then take those two that are currently crowd controlled onto the boss with the Pride buff and nuke everything down as quickly as they can. But this, I mean, that Praetor is not cooperating right now with Echo's plans. It has just charged over off the edge, and I don't think they'll be able to actually bring it back on from over there. Look at what it's doing. It's kind of right off the edge there. So, I don't think that they're really going to be able to maneuver it like they'd like to. So you can see now has kind of had to move the Pride over next to it so they could cleave onto it. Whereas Perplexed have actually gained a little bit in terms of damage onto these mobs here. They've had a better job of keeping everything nice and tightly grouped up here. And Echo's still getting out of this faster, but Perplexed right behind them as Echo are now going right into the boss. They have all of these mobs coming in as well. They're going to want to keep them interrupted so that they can group them up into this big damage. But once they do, they will die very, very, very quickly to all of this Ashen Hallow and Windwalker incidental cleave.
Yeah, the Ashen being popped here by Zaelia. Ryzen already used it. I'm not actually completely sure if Ryzen already used this as well, but there's a huge amount of single target damage gonna come out from all of these classes here. Unfortunately, Ashan does not have the Celestial Alignment just ready yet. Okay, there we go. Now there's the Ashen being popped by Ryzen as well. And the CA is gonna be back up within the Pride window still. And that's the most important thing. As long as you get your cooldowns within that Pride buff, you're not gonna be losing any damage, so that's perfect for them as well. You can see how quick we saw Ashan actually getting hit by one of those orbs. Did manage to survive though. Used a potion as well just to be sure that he's fine. But yeah, Venture's dropping quite a bit faster for Echo here.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because it looks like there's just so much damage here coming out from both teams. Both the Moonkin and the Windwalker Monk are really putting up the numbers here. And of course, those Holy Pallies in first and second place on the meters. Wow, a lot of these orbs are being hit on the side of Perplex. They are barely living at this plus 20 keystone level, but that is something they have to watch out for. They are going to be killing this boss 5 seconds slower than Echo, so this is still really anybody's game. There's so... Oh my god, another connection with the orb. Swag dropping to 4% after the boss is dead. A final parting gift comes out from that little orb there. And they are all now taking this relaxing Kyrian Airlines flight to their final destination here. The last little part of the dungeon with 2 more bosses and a couple big trash pulls, a couple scary trash pulls still ahead of them.
Yeah, this initial pull here on this platform is going to be very crucial for both of the teams. We've seen almost all teams pull this triple pack together into a Kyrian spear and then AoEing it all down. The crucial part is going to be able to stack it all up to be able to get the Kyrian spear on to all of them. We've seen one of the Chinese teams yesterday not being able to stack one of the Inquisitors on top, using the mind control to get them in, but then they were just missing the damage and they ended up having a full team wipe because of it. So let's see if Echo and Perplexed can execute this pull perfectly. We see the mind suit being used to be able to get into position first, and now everything is being stacked by them.
Yeah, this is such a crucial pull here. You can see the Ring of Peace knocking everything into that spear, and the spear comes down. All of the AoE damage cooldowns are going to come out. This does come with a damage amp as well, so it's a good idea if you can to land as much damage into this window as possible. And you can see Gingy spiking up there to 60k. Same thing happening with Wolf Disco on the side of Perplexed. There's the Pride spawning now for Echo. They still have 1 Goliath to take care of, but otherwise they are in the clear. They've taken care of all that trash. Meanwhile, on the side of Perplexed, a couple of mobs still left alive here. This is the scariest point because they all have that raging buff, but they are now also taken care of. That is the 80% Pride spawning for Perplexed as well, and they are still just a couple of seconds behind there. You can see a world marker actually coming out from Perplexed right now on where one of those weapons has been purged. Divine, the only melee player on that team, is going to be the person to pick that up, and another one drops there. Bryson is actually going to pick it up and start using it to deal a little bit more damage with those auto attacks. That's a nice little thing to make sure that you're being aware of, is whenever those weapons are dispelled, picking them up is actually quite a bit of damage.
Yeah, so it looks like Echo just... I'm not sure if they just had the Warden's Deceit or if they just nuked it down with the AoE pack, but they didn't seem to be utilizing that Warden at all, and they dealt with this trash pack quite a bit quicker compared to Perplexed. They're already fighting Oriferian now. They did also pull the Usurpers, and they're seeing them in this corner here. They had the Ring and Fear Sigil as well that they utilized to make sure everything is stacked. And now they're just going to be AoEing it down with the boss. This is very efficient. Looks like Perplex is doing the same thing.
I love what Echo has done, though, because Echo, they pulled the trash while they were running to the boss, and then they got right into the boss, and they used Ring of Frost to keep everything grouped up until they could get over to it. Whereas Perplexed actually stood behind this pillar and baited the mobs to get onto them first, and then pulled the boss onto those mobs. And that left like 5 or 10 seconds where they were just kind of standing there waiting for things to group up. Echo had no waiting time at all. They were just right into boss, no delay whatsoever, and you can see the boss is about 10% lower for Echo than it is for Perplexed. It's entering that first recharge phase now. It looks like it'll be now soaking those orbs. Oh no, a Shine goes down for Perplexed. That's their only instant cast battle res as well. They can get an engineering res on him, and it looks like Ryson is going to be looking to do just that after maybe... Oh no, they got him up. Okay, it was on the other side.
So this is actually really bad for them because they had used Bloodlust and then Ashine died right afterwards. So now Ashine does not have the Bloodlust available, and Ashine is the one who has the most single target burst damage with that CA and the Convoke. So losing a little bit of damage here, which means that Bloodlust they committed might not actually be saving them as much time. As you can see, the difference in damage between Echo and Perplexed. Echo not committing that Bloodlust and Perplexed did. So of course Perplexed slightly ahead in boss percentage now, but it maybe didn't make up that much time as they were hoping for with that Bloodlust being used in this fight. So really unfortunate death here on Ashine, losing that Bloodlust. Echo, on the other hand, they are saving theirs, which makes me want to think that they want to do that triple angel pull as we've talked about earlier, while Perplexed probably is not going to, considering that they don't have any of those offensive cooldowns available now. No Spear, no Bloodlust, and also no Celestial Alignment.
So much damage here coming out onto Echo's players as they pull the boss into the second half of the trash mobs from the other side. Perplexed, because they pulled that extra mob earlier, didn't need to do both halves. They only needed to pull one of the two sides to get to this 87% trash threshold. So they are now heading upstairs first. But like you said, Echo has that Bloodlust available. And like we always see in Spires of Ascension, it's going to come down to this Triple Angel. Whether or not these teams attempt it and then succeed at it is going to be the deciding point in this game. Perplexed is going to get started here with just 2 of the 3, but Echo with that Bloodlust available, I have a suspicion that they are going to try and deal with all 3 at the same time, and that will potentially make or break their run.
Yeah, so I don't think they're actually going to have Ashen, because I do believe Salia actually committed the Ashen Hollow on the 3rd boss, so it's not going to be ready for this, but they have all the damage dealers cooldowns, they have the PI, they have the Bloodlust, everything is being popped and gathered in that Kyrian Spear as well, so we'll see if they can do it. Now, all eyes on Echo. If they're going to be able to pull this off, then they're definitely going to be in the lead, because Perplexed has to do one extra Angel pull after they're done with those 2. But this pull is so difficult for Echo. They don't have any Enrage spells. And you can see now dropping incredibly low. All of them are in raging range now. So they need to have all of the defensives that they have available to them, and they need to be able to kill them within only a couple of seconds of each other. They do have the Touch of Death from Fragments that can help out in case some... And they did it! All of the Angels are dead. They are now going into the corner to bait the spawn of the Pride, and they're going to be using the Invis potions to just skip this Pride completely. And that was incredibly well executed by Echo.
That was insane. I mean, that is a pull that we have seen cause so many problems for so many top teams, to the point that Perplexed decided it wasn't even worth trying it. And I can't blame them for that either. It's been something that has led to so many teams losing this map when they otherwise would have won. But against Echo, it is just not going to cut it, because Echo has successfully done all 3 of those at the same time. And like you said, that is a big benefit of the Windwalker Monk, the ability to equalize. Whichever of them is the highest health, you just have Touch of Death to put them over the finish line there on that very short window that you need to kill all 3 of them in. And Echo have done exactly that, and their reward for it is going to be a much, much faster pull of Devos here. That means that as long as they don't wipe to this boss, there's basically no amount of damage that Perplexed is going to be able to deal here to close this gap, I don't think.
Yeah, this is definitely Echo in the lead now, and they're the ones who can just easily kill off Devils here once they're... as long as they don't have any mistakes, right? There's still one thing that can wipe them, in my opinion, and that's if somebody accidentally pulls the Pride. Because the Pride is standing there in the corner, and if you do walk too close to it, it will be pulled, and there's no way they can fight the boss and the Pride at the same time, unless they maybe have all of their cooldowns available for it. But that's definitely going to be putting them very far behind, or have a full team wipe. So they have to be very careful to not step too far to that right side. And sometimes it looks like the model of the Pride is actually falling off in that intermission phase, but it's still physically there. So if you do walk too close, even if you don't see the Pride, you might still pull it and get encumbered with it. Might or might not have happened to me.
Yeah, I've seen that as well, where it looks like it's gotten blown off the platform, but really it's just in stealth, waiting to pounce when you walk too close. It is something they really do need to be aware of, and it means that whoever they send to collect those orbs on that side during the intermission phase has to get them quickly before they get blown too close to the edge. But they've done a great job of doing that so far. No surprise coming out from Echo that this has been such a clean boss fight for them at this point. This is orders of magnitude easier than the Triple Angel pull that they've already successfully taken care of. Although it's worth noting, they did use basically all their cooldowns on that pull. So they were doing this boss without too much left in the tank. However, at 30%, they will be entering that last intermission phase, and this is really the last opportunity for things to go wrong for Echo. Perplexed are close behind here, so if Echo does have a mistake, if Echo does pull that Pride, there might still be enough time for Perplexed to catch up here. But if that doesn't happen, Echo is in great position. You can see Zayla is going to use the Door of Shadows to yoink that farthest, most dangerous orb out of harm's way, and everybody has to be really careful here. Gingy getting pretty close to where that Pride is. Echo actually has it spawned on the opposite side to where teams usually do, and it looks like they may have failed to deposit one orb as well. So they're needing to collect another set here, and they have done so. They've gotten all the orbs they need. They're throwing in now 2 Devos. They've connected with the spear. Maybe they missed the first spear, actually. I don't know exactly how that happened, but that intermission lasted longer than it was supposed to. It is not going to be enough, though, for Perplexed. Perplexed, valiant effort here, a very fast time, but it is not going to stand up to Echo's flawless, zero-death Triple Angel run. I cannot believe what we have seen here out of Echo. This is such a commanding performance.
Yeah, that was so incredibly clean, and they're gonna be finishing off Davos here and winning this first game against Perplexed. I mean, what a performance! I mean, it's so difficult for Perplexed to win a game against Echo if they just have such fast and well-executed runs like this SPIRES that we've just seen. Wow, what a run by Echo.
That's really ridiculous. You might think you got like just such a clean run. You're going, very safe, very secure. Everything's going right for you. The spear pulls on both sides look good. And then Echo's just able to be so efficient and just that much faster. It's ironic. That's ridiculous. It's such a tough opponent.
Yeah, and I hope we have the damage scorecard here at the end here, because there's one particular thing that I really want to focus in on. We'll go against this, go up into this more in the replays later on, but the Windwalker Monk versus the Boomkin. I want to see the overall AoE damage. Yeah, 9.9k for the Windwalker versus just barely over 8k for the Boomkin. I think the Windwalker cooldowns were just so much better situated in this dungeon. If you actually paid attention to where the cooldowns were used over the course of the dungeon, Ashine sat on his CA for like probably overall a total of 4 minutes or so in the dungeon. He waited the first 2 minutes of the dungeon to use it on the first boss, and then he had to wait for it for very specific pulls, whereas Fragments could kind of just pop his 2 minutes on cooldown throughout the entire dungeon. So I think, in addition to playing an incredibly clean game, Echo just had a better comp for the dungeon.
Interesting. What do you think about that, Edgar, from like a Boomkin perspective? You think he was just holding on to it too long, or what do you think the idea was?
I do think that the reason why they're running the Moonkin is also like the strategy that they're running. I think the one thing that cost them the most time here, Perplexed, is the fact that Ashine died right before that damage phase on Arifrian. Because their strategy is to use the Bloodlust there, nuke the boss within one phase, and then go up. And they basically think that that's going to be the same time save as doing the triple angel pull. And I do think it is pretty close, because as you saw at the very end, Perplex wasn't that far behind. And if they actually would have managed to one phase Orifrian without the shine going down, I think this would have been a much, much closer dungeon. So I do think with the strategy that they're trying to do, the Moonkin does make sense. But overall, I also think that the Windwalker is just slightly better.
Gotcha. What do you got for us, Zyro, with some of these pulls? I mean,
yeah,
we're so used to seeing SPIRES have like disastrous results and everything, but seeing both teams being able to execute to near perfection was incredible.
Yeah, I mean, it's really just kind of showcasing where the Windwalker cooldowns are available versus the CA from the Druid here. The big things are where you can use the cooldowns. Of course, the beginning of the dungeon is a great precursor. Fragment's able to pop his 2-minute cooldowns on this first pack. Echo gets through the AoE a little bit quicker, and then he's able to have it up right on the pull for the boss here once again with the Prideful buff. Really big. Yes, Ashine does get the CA Convoke here with the Pride, but I feel like just the extra usage of cooldowns is really important. In addition to that, because it's a 2-minute cooldown, those 2 minutes are back up for this pull again, whereas Ashine doesn't have the CA here. And this kind of continues out throughout the rest of the dungeon here. Cooldowns up for Fragments during Pride on Vintanax, whereas Ashine gets the CA Convoke without the Prideful on Vintanax. Small advantages once again. Again, the 2 minutes up for this pull. CA wasn't up here. Perplexed had a hard time finishing off that Prideful because they had some raging Dark Lashes going off on the group, little extra damage on the group, more healing required from the healer. And then again here, having the 2 minutes available for the triple pull with the Bloodlust, and the Touch of Death to clean it up as well. It's just like all of that adds up to such tiny advantages over the course of the dungeon that Echo's able to pull it off. And yeah, there's something to be said about having this Soothe for the Druid that makes it a little bit safer. But something has rang true with Echo ever since we had our global finals in Australia 2.5 years ago or so. It's like when they lost that, they never wanted to lose a global finals ever again. And when they get into these global finals scenarios, they just tend to play the best comp, even if it's a little bit dangerous, and they always win with it.
That's right. I mean, it's been so many years of Echo dominance as well, Dratnos, and, I most remember JB saying, yeah, you might feel like safe with the pull, you might feel comfortable with a pull, but when you're practicing against Echo and you're preparing against this team, you have to do everything just a step more aggressive, just a step out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, sometimes I stay up really late on like a Monday night doing some last minute keys before the reset, and you run into this situation where you like just start your keystone, and the servers are like, oh, the servers are shutting down for maintenance in 15 minutes. And you're like, how on earth am I going to get this dungeon done this quickly? And that's the exact feeling of playing against Echo. It's like, you have 15 minutes once the keystone starts, or you're out of there. They're going to teleport you out. You've lost the map. And somehow you have to figure out a way to do this dungeon that fast. It is so stressful because you not only need your pulls to go perfectly, they need to be dangerous too. Because if your pulls are safe and clean and well executed, you're getting teleported out of the dungeon. It's not happening.
Yeah, it's very, very tough to be able to not only get to Championship Sunday, but then, have the expectation of going up against Echo in that upper finals. And, speaking of being very dangerous, Naguro, we're going into Sanguine Depths, which has just been constantly filled with trouble for teams.
Yeah, I mean, Sanguine Depths is one of those dungeons where we've said that this is Echo's dungeon, right? This is the dungeon where Echo won, I believe, almost every single time where they stepped foot into this dungeon. And they're just so clean and so good specifically here, while lots of other teams had all of these wipes, all of these struggles, and Echo is just really, really clean and executing this dungeon so well. But with the recent changes with the lanterns, making the buff last longer, I actually think it's I would say a disadvantage for Echo almost, because they were so good at rolling the buff when the duration was shorter, that now that it's longer, also the other teams are able to do it pretty easily to roll the buff through, so they're not having this edge anymore of being able to execute that buff throughout the whole ring area. So I do think this is still going to be very close between those two.
Interesting. So it's going to make it a lot easier for the opponents to be able to take advantage of it. I'm kind of curious as well what you think there, Dratnos, because we've also seen, with that buff, we've also seen a lot of different pulls. We've also seen a lot of different moves to be able to stack it up even quicker than we'd seen previously.
Yeah, I mean, on the one hand, like, Echo has been a dominant force in this dungeon throughout our season. They were able to figure out how to roll this lantern buff even before it was changed and made easier to do. They had these awesome strats here. On the other hand, when you're great at a dungeon and then things about it keep changing, every single time, that's another opportunity for the other teams to catch back up, right? To develop another new strategy with the new changes that makes them faster than you. And we have seen different teams have a different take on how to attack this dungeon, whether you're taking that 20% pride into the boss, whether you're going to kill the boss with a bunch of trash and spawn the pride right at the end of that boss. All of those sorts of little things at different points in the dungeon, you kind of have to reassess everything about the dungeon whenever they change any part of it, because that calculus will affect all the way through, all the decisions about where you're going to refresh your lantern buff. They need to be kind of backtracked all the way through, because all your cooldowns and everything are all predicated on that.
Yeah, let's see what these teams have in store for us as Echo is up 1 right now versus Perplexed as Sanguine Depths gets underway.
All right, I'm super excited for this one here. Both of those teams, of course, do want to stay in this upper bracket. Don't want to fall down into the lower one, because it's such a big advantage for that grand final to just win this series here. So everything on the line for Perplexed. They need to win this one if they don't want to fall down into the lower bracket. And as we talked about, this is just such a good dungeon for Echo, so it's going to be so hard for Perplexed. Both of the teams just gathering up this initial pull onto this first lantern.
And neither team is using that elemental shaman that we've seen some teams opt to use in here. They are both on this Death Knight, Shadow Priest, Fire Mage composition. I actually think this is a cool set of decisions that have been made here, but my favorite thing about these comps is Divine has been doing this all weekend. He's been playing this Necrolord Demon Hunter outside of dungeons where you need that Kyrian, like in SPIRES, you need it so you can pick up those spears. In here, he's actually playing that Necrolord, so it's a cool little difference. And let's check back in at the end of the dungeon and see what the damage and healing between the two Demon Hunters is going to be like, because I think there's maybe an argument to be made for this Covenant choice on the spec. There's a lot of really cool stuff that it brings to the table with that Fleshcraft, with those demon spawns, and with the Ameni Soulbind tree.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look at the time how they dealt with this first pull, it was so even. I think there was like a half a second that separated those two teams when they finished off that first pull. So incredibly well executed. Looks like Echo is pulling the boss immediately onto this whole first trash pull. This is incredible. So they're using the Ashen Hallow by Sally. They pulled the whole area with the Brute and the boss. And look how fast the boss is dropping. They're also going to be spawning the Pride, if I'm not mistaken, with this Brute here. So I'm not sure if they want to keep it alive to not spawn it, or if they are planning on bursting down the Pride with the boss. I mean, this is an insane strat by Echo just now.
It looks like their damage is being assigned, so these two are going to die right around the same time. This is really cool. That Brute has a lot more health than the other mobs that are near it, so what we've seen teams do is they decide, look, we can just AoE to our heart's content. Because that Brute has so much health, we're not in any danger of accidentally spawning this Pride, right? And then once there's just two mobs left, it's easy enough to focus damage into that one main target there, and you can see perfect timing. The boss goes down and the Pride comes up right at the same time, so Echo is not going to be losing any effective time, and they will now get to single single target this Pride. On the other hand, Perplexed are going to come out of this exchange with more count, right? They are pulling trash with boss, and they've already earned their Pride buff. So this is a difference in strategy already, but they are going to be deploying much more damage here because their cooldowns are going to be multiplied with this Pride buff, whereas Echo is going to have those two things sequentially instead.
Yeah, this is actually reverse strategies, because this is what Perplexed did in Spires, where they pulled the Pride on top of the bosses and they used their cooldowns to be able to deal with the Pride and then not have the cooldowns for the Pride buff. But Echo is doing it the other way around now. So really interesting to see the reverse kind of positions for both of those teams in those two dungeons. Perplexed now finishing off the boss, and they're 6% trash ahead, as you just mentioned. And Echo, though, has the Pride buff. So this is going to be really close between the two teams still, because Echo is going to be dealing with this trash faster because of the Pride, but Perplexed has a slight advantage in trash percentage as well. And one thing to note that I just realized is that all of them are actually playing dwarves, either normal dwarves or iron dwarves, except the tanks. The tanks are night elves, of course, because they cannot be dwarves. And the reason why is because we have bursting. So they have those the ratios to get rid of the bursting stacks whenever they need to, on top of also having the master spell from the Shadow Priests.
Yeah, that's such a powerful amount of effects to deal with bursting. That's an affix that can be pretty scary if you have 10 or 11 stacks, which in MDI situations you often do. But the fact that you can just clear them from basically the whole group with those abilities is huge. And you can see Echo are going to be reaching that 33% trash count, killed off that mob. The Pride has expired on them, but they are interested in getting some more damage buff right now. As you can see, now is going to be grabbing a ton of enemies, running back over to this Lantern. Ring of Frost is going to come down to let everything group up except for that Overseer, which of course does not respect crowd control. And they will potentially be opening this Lantern here. Looks like Zaylia is doing that right now. Perplexed doing a different strategy. Instead, they are moving ahead. They didn't pull this trash pull that is in front of the Lantern. Echo pulled this with the last pull because they had that Pride buff. Perplexed unable to do that because they didn't have that Pride buff, and so they are instead going to be pulling some trash right now, and they are fighting in the room here, but a Shine is going to go down right at the start of this pull, and this is a disaster here for Perplexed. Not sure exactly what got him, but they are going to res him up. So they still have or they've used their battle res. They don't have a battle res anymore. Everything else about this pull, though, as long as they can keep those interrupts under control, they should be okay. But the problem is, this is a pull where they run out of interrupts pretty quickly if they don't kill everything fast. And they had 2 players absent for like 5 seconds there, a Shine and whoever was casting battle res on him. That meant that they had a pretty sketchy situation there. They are going to be able to recover, though, and they are fighting this Pride in the corner because they've activated the Lantern on the other side of the wall, so they're actually getting that Lantern buff as long as they're killing mobs right in the corner of this room here. Echo, though, wasting no time. They've already killed their 40% Pride, and they're now moving on into this mini-boss room with 10 stacks of Lantern and with a Pride buff.
Yeah, so both of them did activate that Lantern earlier, but chose to pull different kind of mobs, and it really looked like the amount of time it took Perplexed to set up the whole pull really cost them quite a lot. They had to use that Mind Soothe and the CC to go past, needed to wait for the patrol to be in the correct position, and then losing a Shine right at the start really cost them a lot of time. Now both of them are dealing with this mini-boss though, and it looks like Echo is moving to that right side Lantern. I do think they did lose their initial Lantern buff, so they're not going to get a refresh here. They still have the Pride buff up, but the Lantern is quite a long time ago, so I'm pretty sure they have lost that one at this point. We'll see if they're going to be able to roll this Lantern buff throughout the next ring area here until the boss, until Torvald. So we'll see how they deal with the Lanterns, while Perplexed is doing something very similar, just making sure they go outside. They're actually dealing with this initial trash back here, the Warden pack, and just gathering up onto the Lantern as well, just like we saw Echo do.
Yeah, these two teams are still neck and neck here. Perplexed have done a good job of recovering from that one death that they had earlier. It hasn't cost them too much, but you can see Echo have pulled ahead a little bit into the lead here. They are now going to be starting on this 60% Pride. They have that Lantern buff as well, and if they can kill this Pride in the next 30 seconds or so, I think they'll be able to refresh their Lantern stacks with it as well. We'll be able to see once that Lantern in the very bottom left of the screen does end up kind of deactivating, as you can see over there. I think it's going to be active for a little while longer, but this is usually a pretty tight timer here, and it can make a big deal. There it goes, it's deactivated. The Lantern is done, so they won't be extending their Lantern buff with this Pride, but They will be getting a prideful buff, and they can maybe still extend their buffs if they get to the next lantern really, really quick and kill the little quill feather that is next to it. Here they go, moving over.
So Perplexed actually managed to refresh there. So Perplexed did deal with this pride so quickly that they actually managed to get it into that lantern window still. So slight advantage here for Perplexed, being able to refresh that lantern buff in the very last second by just killing off that pride a little bit quicker. So really close between those two teams at this point. Echo, of course, already were a little bit faster with finishing it off, but not being able to refresh that lantern buff is a slight disadvantage. So let's see how they deal with this pack here, as they have a Sentinel and a Warden here. That's a huge amount of damage on the tank. So Divine Field and now need to make sure that they're going to be fine here to survive, as now doesn't have a cheat death anymore. And Mirrors goes down. They do have a Battle Rest available. Of course, they have the DK, so they had the instant Battle Rest to be able to use. So I don't think that was too big of a damage loss. They really quickly recovered with that DK's Battle Rest. But now we're even on the deaths. We have 1 death for both teams.
Yeah, I mean, that looked scary for Echo, but you've got to look at the count here. That pull was so much bigger for them than it was for Perplexed, and they have done in 1 pull what it looks like Perplexed is going to be doing in 2 separate pulls, and that is a huge advantage for Echo. Even with that death, the fact they were able to make a bigger pull work is the kind of thing that gives you... I mean, this is a series that is often going to come down to a handful of seconds, and doing something 1 pull faster, that can give you 30 seconds, that can give you a minute at times as well. Perplexed, 76% trash count here. It looks like they are going to be having more count in their ring section here, so they might be able to sneak a little bit of a better routing through the rest of the dungeon as a result of how this has worked out. But look at what they're doing right now. Perplexed is just fighting these 2 trash mobs kind of by themselves, and this is an extremely inefficient time right now for Perplexed. This is not them doing what they'd like to be doing, whereas Echo are on a boss, and that's something you kind of have to do, right? Fighting bosses by themselves, that's kind of normal. Perplexed, though, they were fighting 2 trash mobs by themselves for a little while. Now they've opened the gates, pulled some ghouls, and they are going to be fighting this boss with this Remnant and these ghouls. Watch Divine's health here, because even in that meta that you can see him in right now, he is taking a lot of damage.
Yeah, definitely very difficult for Perplexed here. One thing to note as well is that both of the teams didn't actually have any sort of buffs for this boss here. No Lantern buff and no Pride buff and no Bloodlust being committed either. So neither of the teams think that they need any buffs for this boss, and they thought that the buffs are actually more important for the trash pulls. So all of the Lantern buffs and the Pride being committed for trash, and the bosses are just being cleaved down with extra trash for Perplexed too. We do see we see the difference in trash now with Perplexed being... They're going to be above 80% even with the trash that they still have here, I would assume. Actually, no, they're at 79%. Okay, so it's just slightly below that 80% mark. And this last school is going to be triggering it. So I assume they want to skip it. So they just maybe want to proc it upstairs, use Invispot, and then go downstairs to just completely avoid that Pride. While Echo, on the other hand, just pulled this whole room except 1 oppressor, and they're also on 79% now. But Perplexed can just completely ignore this room. I'm not sure how they're going to be dealing with that, though.
Yeah, this is going to be so interesting, because on the one hand, if you're Perplexed, maybe you skip the Pride and then you do an AoE trash pull downstairs onto the boss, and maybe you can still make that happen without the Pride buff. If you can do that, that is probably a huge time save. On the other hand, you could also just kill the Pride, and then you get a big buff that will make that room much safer, if a little bit slower, because you had to spend that time killing the Pride. So that is going to be the question here. Echo, on the other hand, also are going to be spawning an 80% Pride once they're done with the boss. The thing is, it's just the next boss instead. So they will need some more trash in their future. They need that first pull of the hallway, and they might skip this Pride as well and then do that pull, if I had to guess. So we'll see here. We'll get an indication of what both teams are up to. It does look like Perplexed are killing their Pride. If Echo can find a way to skip this Pride, that would be something that I think will give them an edge here. I mean, they're already, of course, almost a boss in the lead at this point, although they are behind on that count by the 1% and the Pride it spawns.
Yeah, and Perplexed struggling a little bit with this Pride here. Divine proccing his cheap death.
Oh, no.
And having to use the AMZ as well to be able to survive. And the Pride doesn't seem to be dying anytime soon. Everyone wants to save their offensive cooldowns here for that, what I assume is going to be a very big pull in that next room. But the one thing in favor of Perplexed is going to be that trash that they can skip later on. Because if they're dealing with this room here on top of the boss, that means that they can skip quite a lot of trash after this boss, while Echo has to play a lot of it. And I'm not sure if Echo intended to play this Pride, but it looks like they were running away and then they changed their minds and walked back into it. Now it looks like they're just completely cleaving down the Pride with the Oppressor, using that shield to reduce some of the damage incoming here. But the Pride is dying really quickly. They have lots of damage onto the Pride, so it shouldn't be a problem for them to finish it off.
Yeah, I mean, they just killed that Pride so fast with the use of that combustion. Huge damage there into it, and the wings as well. And Frag's cooldowns too. They've done huge damage to this whole pull. But Perplexed on the other screen have just demolished this boss and all of its trash as well. So both teams now at 85% count. They are both ready to skip to the general call Trash Gauntlet. That is the next order of business for Echo. Perplexed almost there as well. They just have to finish off this boss. So something like 30 seconds or so is going to be all of the gap between these two teams. That is enough for Echo if they can make this work. And look at what they're doing. They're going all the way to this lantern. This is so bold. They are going all the way up ahead to the lantern here, and they're going to fight the first two halves or 2/3 of the gauntlet all at once here, opening up the lantern. And once they can kill this, they will be safe because they'll have 50% extra damage and healing. And there it goes. All of those lantern buffs coming out onto the team. And now they get to deal like 20% of General Call's damage. Once she gets to 90%, she'll kind of go invulnerable for a bit and then run close by and now come back out of invulnerability, and they can keep fighting her. There it is. This is really cool. Look for them to potentially be pulling those acolytes in as well at some point. That's something that maybe once Sigil of Silence is back, they'll be looking to pull those in. They did use that Sigil earlier in this pull, I think. So they need to wait a little bit on that cooldown. This is such a huge, huge time save, though, for Echo relative to doing this gauntlet more slowly. And there's the Sigil of Silence coming out. All of these casters are not going to be getting anything done. All of these stacks are going to be refreshed of the Lantern buff as well. And they are zooming through here. But Perplexed also going very big here at the start of their gauntlet, too.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, Echo is pretty clearly in the lead because of that difference that we had with the way Perplexed dealt with the trash in the very end of this ring section and with that boss. They did manage to skip that initial trash pull after the third boss, but it didn't make up as much time as they might have hoped. Echo is already pulling that Sentinel, the Chamber Sentinel, on top of General Call. They're doing this whole gauntlet area in 2 pulls, basically. This is pretty bold by Echo to be able to just deal with all of this after already committing so many cooldowns for this first huge pull. So really well done by them. Now it does have Cheat Death available, but they just got 3 bleed effects on Now, Fragments, and Celia. Did manage to use the shield, though, to get rid of it as well, and they also used their Dwarf racials to help out with those bleed effects. So really, really nice to have those Dwarf racials to help them out, not only with bursting, but also with those bleeds that are being applied from General Cal here in this gauntlet area.
They are going to get this gauntlet done so much quicker than Perplexed because they're doing it in one last pull. I mean, they pulled right onto that lantern to get started, and they have made such good use of the lantern extends as a result as well. So they are already now just working on these last 2 Hunt Masters. Once they do that, they'll have their 100% Pride, and once they do that, they just have General Call left, and that'll be the end of the dungeon. So they are really almost done here. There's very little left that stands between them and that upper finals path to the grand finals here, and looks like they are going to be killing this Pride. No designs on skipping it. They are just going to take down the Pride and then have all of their cooldowns with the Prideful buff to just remove General Call from existence in the near future.
Yeah, I mean, this is such a fast and speedy run by Echo and incredibly well executed too. Only this 1 death on the board, which was on Maris in that ring section earlier. Didn't cost them too much time as it was at the end of one of their pulls there. So really not too bad on the time for them. While Perplexed is just dealing with this whole, the last section of the dungeon a little bit slower. Up until Torvald, they were pretty at the same speed at the same time in the dungeon, but then Echo just dealt with everything a little bit quicker, and now they're popping this Bloodlust. They have the Pride buff, they have all offensive cooldowns available, and General Kal is going to be melting for Echo here.
Yeah, watch that timer near the top of the damage meters there. 24 seconds into the fight so far, and they're already more than halfway done with the boss's health. This boss will die once it reaches 50% HP, and this boss fight is going to be over so fast. And remember, our best time in this dungeon was like an 1840 or something in the last couple days. Echo is going to get this thing done in 17 minutes and 30 seconds. This is a blazing fast time from Echo, and it punches their ticket to our grand finals.
Are you kidding me with that time there? Echo just breezing through this dungeon completely, just rolling it over on that one, taking, just massively